Hello, everybody. I have the pleasure of introducing Nick Percoco from Rapid7. He's going to give a talk about why startups need to think about digital security. Take it away, Nick.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, everybody. So before we jump in, I just want to do a little bit of poll the audience here and see if you agree with this statement. Security hygiene is extremely critical and gives an advantage to startups as they're embarking down their road of building their business. Anybody think that's important? Everybody. Well, that's awesome. I actually did a poll that was very similar on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and about 79% of the people agreed, and about 21% didn't agree. And of course, on Twitter, you never get people like giving nice comments about why they agree. It's always the negative stuff. And so the things that they said where they disagreed were comments like, security has no place in the startup methodology. It's sort of an inhibitor, it slows things down, it makes things harder, and so they're going as fast as they can with their billion-dollar idea. Security slows it down. And so I don't agree with that, and so we're going to talk for a couple of minutes about why security is important for startups as they're building their business. The one topic, sort of think about is the topic of security hygiene, and how we define security hygiene is very similar to personal hygiene. I'm sure most of us this morning, maybe when we woke up, we brushed our teeth. Or in the last 24, 48 hours, we took a shower. And we think about, why did we do that? What's the important reasons why we did that? Well, there's obvious health benefits to doing so, and there's social benefits to doing so. And when we think about security hygiene, it's all about doing things that are security basics, things that you should be doing every single day that'll make a big difference in the long-term outcome. Through my career, I've been involved with probably around about 2,000 data breach investigations, some of the very largest in the world, and some small as well, some small organizations. What I learned through that experience is that it really doesn't matter the size of the company, the budget that they have in order to spend on security. It doesn't really matter how large their team is. The big differentiator between the companies that get breached and the ones who don't get breached is the support they have at the executive level. It's the culture of security that they have within their business. And if you rewind the clock to the time when that company was just starting their business, there was probably one person or two people with ideas in order to build this business. At that moment in time, it's extremely important that security, at least the security hygiene aspects, is in their daily lives and it's part of that business. Because 5 years later, when there is a data breach and when they suffer a data breach or there is something that happens in an organization, there's not the CEO or the founder of the company that looks around and says, well, I thought we were doing security. They never ask those questions in their world. So when you think about protecting your billion-dollar idea, all startups have this idea. They hope that someday becomes something extremely, extremely large. Going back to the security basics and building that aspects of your business is extremely important. And it's not looking at the large security frameworks that we often hear about. It is very, very simple things that make a difference. So when we're thinking about security basics, one of the first items is passwords. Having in your startup mentality of actually choosing good passwords for all the systems that you happen to use, or turning on things like two-factor authentication. If the executives or the founders of that company are really keen on choosing good passwords and making sure that the decisions they make throughout their life cycle that'll lead to better security decisions later on. When employees start coming on board, they'll lead by example and they'll actually show them the way. The other area is things like device security. These are also go down to personal devices. I've run into people who are founders of companies who actually have 5-year-old Android devices that they're using. And so, anybody who knows anything about security of those types of devices, 4 or 5-year-old device is most likely no longer supported. That means there's no security patches available to it. And having a founder who thinks that, well, it's okay for me to use this device when they're bringing on employees again, when they're building their teams, they're not, again, leading by example. The other areas of things like encryption. Now, I know there's been lots of discussions over the last couple of days about encryption, but that's also an area. It's a fundamental, basic security hygiene. If you have the capability to use encryption on a device or in your business or encrypt customer data or do something along those ways, you should be thinking about doing that. Don't wait until you have 1 million customers using your social media app to start encrypting PII or doing things with credit card numbers in your environment. And then another topic is permissions. This often happens with growing companies. They start sharing things a lot. You have a cloud drive and you have lots of files that you're using for your business. You have a third-party marketing firm that's going to help you out with your branding, and you start sharing off files. In most organizations, sharing and especially cloud data becomes very, very messy. And so having a culture early on to say, well, we're going to, on a regular basis, we're going to review our stuff. We're going to review our systems. We're going to view our directories to make sure that if we are sharing it to this third-party firm that we engaged a year ago, if we don't need to share it with them anymore, we can actually turn that off. And then finally, the last area from a security hygiene standpoint is awareness. Being aware of the cyber risks and the security risks around you is extremely important. I've been here at South by Southwest for a number of days and have been in lots of different social environments. Things that are put on by various groups, have had lots of conversations. I've had individuals come up to me and said, hey, I'm starting up a new company, I'm launching an app in about 6 months. We're still in stealth, so we're not talking about it publicly. And all I did is ask a question of, so tell me about what you're doing. And they went off for about 20 minutes and told me their entire business plan, everything they're doing. So I guess they're not really in stealth. So having that awareness is extremely important. And then also, vetting people you're gonna run into. If you're a startup, you're gonna have lots of folks that you're gonna want to interact with that are not employees, not people that are actually on your payroll. And being aware of who you're interacting with is extremely important. You can vet individuals pretty easily today. Things like LinkedIn. Someone gives you a business card and says they're an angel investor. Look them up on LinkedIn, see who they are. See if you have anybody in common that you know. I actually travel around quite a bit. I've had people give me business cards at conferences. I've looked them up on LinkedIn, and it turns out that we had 4 or 5 people in common. I pinged a couple of those people, and they had no idea who that person was. They were like, I was at a conference, and that person gave me a business card as well. And so those types of things can happen, and as you're growing a business and you have this billion-dollar idea in your hand, there are people that will want to take that idea and run faster than you can and get there quicker than you can. So finally, the big area, when you think about if you're a startup leader and you're building this business, leading by example is the most critical aspect. Like I mentioned, going back to data breaches that I investigated, most of those data breaches suffered minor issues in their environment or minor flaws. Things like weak passwords or things like a CTO's workstation was unpatched and someone attacked that CTO and gained access to their systems. So being an executive, leading by example, doing the security basics will then bleed over to when you're in an important meeting and you have to make an A or a B decision around a direction that your company is going to go, you actually will think about security and actually possibly, hopefully, choose the right path to go down. So with that, I think we have a few minutes. We could open it up to for some questions.
I have a mic that I can pass.
And we have a question in the back.
So what would you recommend when you're part of a startup and you bring up the security issues? For example, they're developing a web service and you ask them, so how are we going to do? Is it going to be like authentication? Are we going to do two-step authentication? What are we going to do? And then they just like, I guess not completely disregard you, but like you said, they just be like, we don't want to look into security just now. We're going to wait until the project gets bigger. And like you said, you should be doing that from early on. And I agree with that, but
yeah.
What would you suggest for someone in that position?
Yeah, I think in many situations, when you're speaking to people, so say you're speaking to your development team or you're speaking to the executives within your company, just telling them like what should be done is typically the problem that people run into. By just saying, we need to enable this or we need to do that. Explain the why. Why is this important? Why is it important now and not when you have 1 million users of this device? I mean, some of that technology and some of those things you can tweak in that product are actually rather minor to turn on within your app or within your product. And doing something now is going to train your user base to accept that higher level of security, and then it also will foster, when you have those conversations, if they see the executives, they see the team is leaning towards better security, well then they'll start making decisions on their own when they have to choose between, should we do it one way or should we do it the more secure way? And they'll become more aware. So I would recommend starting with the why and explaining the story around why it's important, rather than just telling, we need this, we need that, and then getting pushback in your business.
Yeah. I've got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Startups are often in sort of a fake it until you make it mode, and it's agile, so you're just putting things out kind of quickly, and then you're going to iterate.
Yeah.
Does that whole process work well with implementing security, though? It doesn't feel like that's particularly easy. I mean, is security as a well thought out thing, and you want to make things bulletproof? Is there really kind of a incremental step that you can do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say no software is free of bugs. Even very mature organizations push code out on a regular basis that has security bugs in it. And so, so that's not something that would be uniquely different for a startup. What I would recommend, when I think about that is, having a security mindset as part of the team. Maybe there's one person that gets knighted, is someone who actually can dig a little deeper and at least think about security decisions. Now, I'm not saying you need to have, hire, if you're a startup with 3 people, you don't need to hire 3 security experts to work with you. That would sort of be infeasible. But having that mentality of, when they're making decisions, if there is a choice of doing something in a little more secure way, making those small steps early on is extremely important. So you don't get that technical debt of 2 years of development and then have to retrofit everything to fix things in the right way.
Well, any other questions? Going once? Nick, thank you so much.
Okay,
This is a
thank
great
you.
talk.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.